about it, we have to integrate the churches, the school systems, and everybody so that we can make changes. When we talk about mental health, in we do a lot of activities in the month of May because this is the time that has been set aside for awareness. And so 1 in 4 people will suffer from some form of mental illness in any given year. So the conversation about mental illness is becoming so prevalent in our society, and that's really a good thing. The National Alliance on Mental Illness in our area in St. Louis is called NAMI. They report that 1 in 4 adults in the United States experience mental illness in a given year, and that mental illness, which while it's not easily defined, can range from a plethora of different disorders that make normal everyday life a challenge or a borderline impossible for the individual. So, for this piece that we're going to be talking about today, we want to talk about how depression and anxiety and those very familiar illnesses happen in our community and what we can do about it. And so, to start off, I put this Bible verse in the very God of peace sanctify you wholly. And I pray, God, your whole spirit and soul and body be preserved blameless until the coming of our Lord Jesus Christ. And the reason I put this in here is because oftentimes many people don't seek help because they think that maybe God doesn't want us to do this because we need to be praying. And we're not talking about we shouldn't be praying, because we should be. But we also know that God wants us to be whole, because mental health can affect any of us, whether we're a pastor, a Sunday school teacher, we're a faithful churchgoer. The suspected struggle of mental illness should not be a source of shame or something that's kept as an ill of something that's hidden from others. The church should be a place of safety and community where those who are struggling can be honest about what's happening to them, where they can ask people to rally around them in prayer and be assisted in seeking professional help. So, this is why I put the Bible verse in this conversation, because too many people think that all you need to do is pray your mental illness away. Prayer is good. I know it changes things, but God wants us to be whole, and we need to be taking care of ourselves totally. And so our next slide is going to show that God wants us to be whole spiritually, mentally, and physically. So, what is mental illness? Mental illness is a condition that affects a person thinking, feeling, or mood. Such conditions may affect someone's ability to relate to others and function each day. Each person may have the same diagnosis, but their experiences are different. So the way it affects me would be different with somebody else. So we want to talk about what is a stigma. A stigma is a mark of disgrace associated with a particular circumstances or quality or a person. So when we look at stigmas, we're talking about labeling people, social exclusion, stereotyping, discrimination, and power. And these are some of the other, we will be discussing these later in the presentation. So there are more than 200 classified forms of mental illness. Some of the more common disorders are schizophrenia, bipolar, depression, and anxiety. Our agency has a hotline. And as a result of the issues that are happening in the community that we're serving now, we're getting a lot of calls through the hotline. And most of those calls that are coming in deal with these four forms of disorders. And so even though there's 200 classified, these are the most popular ones that are happening and that we get our calls on. So mental illness does affect us, and it does not discriminate in terms of age, gender, religion. We have a lot of people say it's not going to happen to me. We don't know that because it does not discriminate. But one of the things when we finish the presentation today, we want to make sure of is that people understand that recovery is possible. Recovery includes having meaningful roles in social life. It means that you will be able to work, to go to school, to do all those things that you want to do, especially when you start treatment early. And this plays a strong role in your recovery process. So the fact is that each year, approximately 44 million American adults will experience a serious mental health condition. Less than half of those will seek treatment due to the stigma that's associated with discrimination. So I'm working. So the stigma is so real that people hide it for fear how others are going to treat them. And I wanted to use an example of someone who is suffering from depression. And this person has everything going for them. They're traveling all over the world. They're extremely wealthy. They're beautiful. They just have everything going on with them. And then imagine this, they're famous. So they can do anything that they want to do. So they go to their boss or the person who helped them to achieve all this stuff. And the person wants to know, what do you have to be depressed about? This causes a lot of people not to want to talk about what's happening with them because that's a response that people would normally give someone who is perceived as a person who have it all. And so this person that I'm talking about is Michelle Williams of Destiny Child fame. She went to discuss her illness of depression with Beyonce's father, Matthews. And the first thing he wanted to know is, you have all this going on for you. What in the world should you be depressed about? And so that happens a lot. And we don't want people to feel that they have to hide what's happening to them out of fear of people not understanding it or putting it on a shelf and not wanting to talk about it. So mental health in the African American, in the Black community has become such a significant public health problem, and it stems from inadequate treatment. So you're going to be hearing a whole lot about mental illness and what is happening in the African American community, because many times we're the ones who are not getting the help that we need. And it's because not only of the stigma, we don't want people talking about us, we don't want people putting us down, staying away from us, or making us feel like we're inadequate. So we don't seek the treatment that we need. There is a fear of the unknown. If I don't know you, I certainly don't trust you. I'm not sure what you would do because you are predictable, unpredictable, and violent. That's what people feel that others think. I'm unpredictable. I might be violent, or I'm not going to talk about it because I fear of you having all these different things to say about me that's not so good. People don't seek help because of a lack of insurance. They feel like I'm not getting a bill on myself because I just can't pay this. I don't have health insurance. It's going to go away. I'll be able to take care of it on my own. People won't understand. I don't want people to know I don't have health insurance. And then we have this fear about trusting in the medical professions. Most people, even right now, when we're dealing with COVID, we're talking about vaccines and getting vaccinated. And African Americans are one group of individuals who are not feeling trustworthy enough to go seek medical professional help to get to protect themselves from COVID because of the Tuskegee um, experiment that they did. We just don't feel that they're going to treat us right. They're not going to give us the best service because we're so used to things happening with us dealing with racial inequality, bad service, or even we feel like a lot of medical professionals think that we're only coming to them because we're druggy or we want medication. So we stay away. And this is something that our agency is trying to prevent. We want people to understand that they have to seek service and learn how to ask those questions that will help them. So, some of the ways that we remove the stigma in our community, we have to stop labeling people. We have to stop telling people that they're crazy. We have to stop saying that you're two French fries short of a Happy Meal. We have to stop telling people and doing all this stuff. They go on their elevator, don't rise to the top. They crazy. They stupid. Don't talk to them. We have to stop doing that. We have to stop using words that offend people. We just can't keep saying things that's going to hurt people. Like, what's wrong with you? You're stupid. You're crazy. You're not making any sense. So we have to stop doing that. We have to talk about the stigma. How are we going to change things if we never talk about it? We have to make this a normal conversation so that people will begin to become so familiarized with stigma, with mental illness, that it becomes like a natural to them. We have to encourage people to seek help when needed. Talk about it. Let them know that it's okay to get help. Let them know that there's nothing wrong with seeking help when they need it. We have to educate people about mental health. I have my co-author that's going to be answering questions with us today. And if you have any questions around mental health, he will be able to answer those. But he will also be back next week to go in depth about this conversation because it is so important to make people aware of it, to make them knowledgeable, because knowledge is power. And when we have power, we will take better care of ourselves. We have to let people know that we're trustworthy. When we talk about how we're going to reduce the stigma, we go into churches and we get churches involved because the church is a place, even though most of us have been reared in church, but even those individuals who may not be attending church now, we all know that it has been the staple of our community. When there's something happen in our families, even if I don't go to the church down at the community on a community block, if I need food, they have a food pantry, I'm going to go there. If I lose my child and something has happened, I'm going to the church for prayer. I'm going to ask the pastor if he would take care of our child, make sure that, they can handle the burial. I'm going to go down there if there's an after school program. I'm working and there's something that, my kids need to do. So we get the churches involved because when we find that pastors can speak from the pulpit about mental illness, it gives people another different kind of comfort. We want to make sure that in churches and in our homes, in our education centers, wherever we may be, that there is a special room where people can pick up brochures, that they can look at things, that they can feel comfortable without feeling like there's all eyes are on me, that I can go in a room and find out anything I want about mental illness, about the stigma, about any of the common disorders that are associated with mental illness, that I will feel safe in this special room. And we normally ask churches to really, create a safe space for people to be able to go in and even find some kind of comfort where they can take away the stress that they're feeling. We ask that people in the churches, the pastors, add a mental health ministry to their program. Even in our homes, we have to start making people feel comfortable about this discussion. Normally, in situations, I can remember growing up and going to people homes. And if there is somebody who's suffering from mental illness, they're put away in another room. Don't come out to the company leave. We don't want you talking. We don't want people to know what's happening in our home, because people are not going to want our children to play with their children. They think it's going to rub off on them. So we have to make sure that we're adding mental health to our homes, to our ministries, wherever we may be, so that people will be able to talk about it, to discuss what is going on, how to handle this situation. We talk about physical needs. We talk about taking care of diabetes, checking and making sure you're taking your medication for high blood pressure issue. We talk about cancer. Don't eat this because it could cause cancer. But when it comes to talking about mental illness, and the brain is the most important organ of our body that controls everything, we don't usually have programs that deal with that. We want to encourage your health teams to take mental health classes. If you don't understand mental illness, if you don't understand why you have a need to get counseling, to seek support, excuse me, make sure that you're encouraging yourself, your family members to take health classes, ask questions, and make sure that you're being encouraging to others. You want to attend any free training for churches or for community centers, such as what's happening today with the Black History Program. They're talking about how do we reduce stigma. These are the things that we need to do to reduce stigma in our community. Excuse me. So the organization that I support, that I work with, is called Bridges to Care and Recovery. And our mission at Bridges to Care and Recovery is to mobilize clusters of churches in North St. Louis City and North County. And we do this to support the behavioral health treatment in the recovery of congregants and community members who may be suffering from behavioral health disorders. And this is really important in extending the system of care for people who are challenged with behavior disorders. So what we want to do is close the gap of services, and we do this through working with our churches so that their arms can reach out into the community and support the community. So our churches go through a 20-hour training program where they learn information such as dealing with trauma, how to become a trauma-informed congregation, dealing with suicide prevention, understanding how to access mental health services, why counseling is important. And we ask our pastors to speak from the pulpit. It's very important that that information is shared, because a lot of people go to the pastors when they're dealing with this issue, and the pastors pray about them. But many pastors also say that we need more information so that we can provide resources to get people the help that they need. So our key goals for our program is to reduce the stigma of mental health, and we do this in faith-based communities. We equip congregations in other community centers and organizations to talk about behavioral health issues. We try to increase the congregation's understanding and acceptance of behavioral health training. So we do classes like companionship training, how to work with individuals who walk into your church who may be suffering from mental illness. What do we do to support them? What are our behavior health issues there that we can provide training and education on? Our agency also try to establish partnerships with the behavior network providers and other congregations. We have trained over 90 churches in the St. Louis area who have gone through our training program, and we have over 50 community providers who work in the behavior health industry that help us with dealing with this stigma, understanding, and we provide counseling for those people who can't afford it. We want to equip congregations and organizations and individuals with the tools that are needed to develop these wellness ministries and to have volunteer companion programs, because we're looking at making this a long-term sustainability project, because in our community, if we don't get the help that we need, we end up in the criminal justice system. We end up in emergency rooms, and those high costs are given back to us when we don't have the monies to pay for the services that we're needing. So we try to make sure that we're diverting people from going to emergency rooms and entering into the criminal justice system by providing early intervention. So we want you, I have Jermaine here, and I'm hoping that he will be able to give you a little bit more information on the process that we want you to remember in the takeaway. We want to make sure that when you walk away from the training today, that you understand that it's important to meditate and to go through mediation. And mediation is a counselor or someone you can talk to about what's happening, and to be able to understand the need for medication if you're diagnosed with medication. What we're finding is that a lot of people say the medicine doesn't make me feel right. Uh, I don't feel like myself. But we want people to be able to go back to their doctors, talk to them, don't just sit the medication aside. You need to let the doctors know what's happening so that they can continue to find what best work for your body, your weight type, whatever's going on, to make that medicine work for you. And Jermaine will give you a little bit more information about that. I just like to really introduce the topic because I heard him speaking on it, and I was like, we need to walk away understanding that we have to take care of ourselves no matter what. Self-care is important, and it includes these three things to make sure that we are whole and that we're taking care of ourselves. So the issue that we're having in our community, we're going through a whole lot. People say that how do we reduce this stigma? Why aren't our people seeking help that they need? We're going through so many social injustices, racism, protests happening in our community, COVID right now. They're saying that more African Americans are dying from COVID than any other race. And part of it has to do with a stigma because we don't go seek the help that we need because we have all these situations that we're dealing with in our minds about people not taking care of us and not giving us the right medication and the things that we need to become healthy. Excuse me, I have a cough here. So it's essential for us to remove the stigma of mental illness and to confirm to others that recovery is possible. We must talk about it in order to change the way that we feel about it. We can no longer have this secret that affects our families, our friends, and our community. We must change the way that people see this and talk about it, educate ourselves, and become more aware of what services are available. We want you to remember that recovery is possible. We want you to continue to provide information, to seek information, and become aware to ensure that people get this information needed to change the way they see or think about mental illness is really important. And also, our agency, the agency that I'm affiliated with, provides free counseling for those individuals who need help. If you or a loved one is dealing with a behavioral health concern, such as stress, anxiety, or depression, or substance use, and you live in North St. Louis City or County, we want you to please call our hotline. Your calls will be answered day or night, and a connector, which is a community connector who connects you to services, will reach out to you within 24 to 48 hours to connect you to a counseling center who will give you the free counseling you need. You can get up to 5 sessions of free counseling. And the number to call is 314-628-6272. So it's really important that we understand that if we need to talk to someone, to do so. I always say talk therapy is good therapy. When you talk, it's like you letting out all of the pain, all of the hurt that's inside of you. You're letting that out. And so it's real important that we get people to understand that there is nothing wrong with seeking help and treatment when they need it. We also have another program that's called Show Me Hope. Show Me Hope is free and it's a confidential crisis counseling service that deals with natural events, things that are happening in our community, such as COVID, such as tornadoes and things, fires, anything that is immediate and that happens. We have to train people to teach them coping and stress skills, management skills to deal with anxiety and uncertainty. People are really going through a lot right now. And our agency started as a result of what was happening, the Michael Brown situation with the Bridges to Care and Recovery program. And so, as we continue to deal with these natural events and pandemics, we must understand that if we are to take care of ourselves, we have to do self care and try to talk about what's happening because these are major things that's happening in our community. We have to remove this stigma and take care of ourselves, our family, find out what local resources are available to support our community and to be able to refer people to give them that information. Again, if you have any questions, we will be here to answer those for you. And I'm going to ask Jermaine to give some remarks. He and I are we co-author this book called Bottled Up Inside because we want people to understand that not only are adults suffering from some of these illness like depression, anxiety, and don't know what to do about it, but our kids are going through it now as well. You see them, they can't go to school. Many of them are not attending school. They're not seeing their friends. They're in the house. They can't go many places. And like us, who's dealing with all these issues, it could cause depression. It could cause anxiety. And we've noticed that there's a higher suicide rate now due to this COVID and what's happening in our community. So Jermaine and I wrote this book because we wanted people to understand how to help teenagers who are going through depression. But in the meantime, we want to make sure that we are doing everything that we can to get people the help that they need. So, to do those things, we have to talk about the stigma that's associated with mental illness and wipe that stigma away through education and awareness and to talk about it. And Jermaine, do you have anything that you want to add to that? Turn your,
Good morning
yeah,
to everyone. How about that? Can you hear me now?
yes.
That is the Zoom, I tell you, saying, can you hear me now? Because everybody gets muted on Zoom. So, yeah, Rose, thank you so much for what you've discussed so far. I tell you what, some people don't know is that the age of onset is when symptoms first begin in the life of a person, is 50% of persons start developing a mental illness by the age of 14. So 50%, 75% by the age of 24. Think about what's going on between the ages of 14 and 24 in the life of a young person. That is typically that age where they're in high school, when they're beginning to take up adult responsibilities after about 18 or 19. And so imagine that age of onset when symptoms may first start beginning in the life of a person. That's why reducing stigma is so important. That's why early intervention is so important. And that's why prevention is so important. And so this book here, Bottled Up Inside, is a way of providing in a very simplistic way some symptoms and signs of depression, but also really honing in on trying to make sure that we raise awareness in African American communities about the importance of breaking the silence, breaking that stigma around getting help. And so in this book, Rose and I tell both our personal experience with loved ones with mental illness, as well as we also give some tips around risk factors and protective factors and suicide. And then at the very end, we give you an opportunity using a learning tool called Help in order to help out a young person who you may be encountering that may be in maybe a crisis or non-crisis situation. And that HELP mnemonic stands for hear, engage, learn, and plan. So in order to help out our young people, we must first hear them and hear their truth. And only then can we engage them. And then once we engage our young persons, then we can learn how we can work together to help them, which then helps us plan with them. It's not just true with young people, even adults. Another, we hear, we engage, we learn, we plan. This is a model that I developed that I used with my son when he was a teenager and he was suicidal and had multiple attempts of suicide. Thankfully, he is now 23 years old and living in recovery. And every day, by that message that recovery is possible. It's a roller coaster ride, but it is possible. And so I would encourage those of you who would love to get a copy of this book. You can go to Amazon and purchase the book. And if you go to Amazon and purchase the book, leave a review, because that's the only way that people know how good it is. But also, we're grateful for the library who has purchased copies of this book and has placed them in the library. So if you want to read a copy of the book, you can actually go to your local library and get a copy of the book. So that's wonderful. So we thank the library system for purchasing those books and getting them in the system so folks can read. So that's my spiel about the book, Rose. Much
So
more
what do you
you can
think
say.
let's talk a little bit about reducing the stigma.
Yes.
And because I want to make sure that when people walk away from our presentation today, they understand that it's going to take all knowledge and awareness to help individuals and to remove this secret that we tend, when I was growing up, my family used to always say, whatever happens in our home, stay in our home. And we have to get away from that, because that is one of the key things to me that keeps that stigma about mental health inside of the homes when we need to get out the house and go and seek help when we need it. So, I want them to walk away with understanding that there are so many layers to this with stop calling people names. You can't talk about people with mental illness in the front of people. And behind them either. But the reason I say this is because if I suffer from mental illness and if I hear you talking about somebody else, that person over there is crazy, or that person over there don't make sense, or just saying all these negative things about this person, why on earth would I come to you to tell you that I'm suffering, that I cry a lot, that I don't want to get up out of bed when I hear the way you treat other people? So we have to begin to be trustworthy and to let people know that if you talk to me, I am going to show you how to get the help that you need. And this is going to be between me and you. And stop labeling them. Can you go through that a little bit, Jermaine?
Yeah, absolutely. Because one of the best ways I have heard stigma defined is that stigma is often like a stigmatism. And I don't know how many folks out there have had a stigmatism, but we know stigmatism has a way of blurring one's vision. And so what stigma does is it blurs our vision, and we don't see each other as human beings, but we see each other as the other, that person, those people. And so we want to make sure that we begin to eliminate stigma and not marginalize persons and put them in camps, as in the scripture that many persons may be aware of, the gentleman who is self-injuring in his community, dealing with some psychiatric issues probably, and the people put him in a cemetery. They lock him up, put him in a cemetery, and this is where he's left. He's marginalized, he's cast aside, he's placed in a cemetery. And so many people who have mental illness are treated just that way. They are cast aside, they're marginalized. In that sacred story, it talks about how Jesus came, and the first question the man is asked is, "What is your name?" And I think that is so important that we humanize persons who have illnesses like schizophrenia or anxiety or depression, and that we don't see them as broken. So it really begins with us having a clear sight, a clear vision, and not allowing that stigmatism to blur how we see one another. And so we do that through education. Remember in the 70s was this thing called cancer that folks were really scared of because they thought it was punishment from God or that you had done something wrong. But through education now, football players wear pink cleats to raise awareness for breast cancer. In the 80s, there was HIV, and there was a lot of fear about how one contracted AIDS. And because of that fear, people would not even want to drink after a person, touch a person. But through education, literacy, we know more about HIV/AIDS. And the greatest challenge that we face in the 21st century is the stigma around mental illness and addictions. And so by getting cleared eye, a clear view through literacy, we could then help persons begin to embrace their neighbor, embrace their family member, embrace the stranger who may be experiencing those mental illnesses. So I think once again, increasing literacy, like we're doing today, helps us to decrease stigma.
Yes. And I was thinking too that, and making sure that this is something that we talk about in our homes. Growing up, my mother talked about it a lot. And I don't know how many people used to look at or are still looking at maybe reruns, maybe The Young and the Restless. My mother used to watch that show all the time. And I remember Miss Chancellor and Nikki and all of them was going to get help. They would brag about, I'm going to see my therapist today. They had therapists for, it seems like, every part of their bodies. Well, my mother was the kind of person was like, well, if they can go see somebody and talk to them about what's happening with them, surely I can go. I'm no different. They're not better than me. And my mother would go. And I can remember at the age of 10, my mother putting us all in the car because she was taking us to meet her therapist. They wanted to, talk to the kids. And I remember sitting in that chair and I was so excited to meet this Black doctor that was a psychiatrist. And I was like, when I grow up, I'm gonna be just like her. But what all that did for us, my mother was so open about this topic, is that when I needed to seek grief counseling because of the loss of her, I picked up the phone and I made a call and I was like, I need to talk to somebody. My mom passed and I'm not getting over this fast enough. And, I need to talk to somebody. So I am comfortable with the fact that when I'm hurting inside, I'm going to get that help. But I also have some friends who this was such a terrible secret that we don't talk about this. Deal with it yourself. You're going to get over it. And those individuals would not seek the support and the help that they need. And I even shared with Jermaine, growing up, I lost a friend who took his life because he couldn't even tell his parents that I'm hurting inside. And we need to take that away by being open, talking to individuals, and just providing them with information. There is absolutely nothing wrong with talking to a professional about what's eating you up inside. No, most of us are not mental health experts. So we should stick to what we know, but we have to provide people with resources and information and read about it and talk about it and make this just as comfortable as anything else that we share and we talk about. We talk about TV shows that we enjoy. We talk about clothes that we like. We talk about that favorite book that we read. So let's make sure that we're talking about therapy, talking about counseling, talking about getting it out when the pain is hurting inside and letting people know that there is nothing wrong with taking care of yourself.
Rose, let me just jump in real quick. And we just had somebody commented there saying a therapist, and there's nothing wrong with that. And yes, you are absolutely correct. There's nothing wrong with that. Let me share with you another model that I created, and it's 5 steps to help yourself. So if you want to get a pen or a paper, something, get ready to write this down because this is good stuff. All right. And I'm a preacher. So listen. So 5 steps to help yourself. You get ready. The S stands for share what you are experiencing with those who care. There's so many times we are not able to share what's bottled up inside of us because we are fearful of what they're going to think about me. If somebody genuinely cares for you, they want to know what's wrong with you. If you broke your foot, they would go, how'd you break your foot? If you broke your arm, they go, how'd you break your arm? If you had a black eye, they show me like, girl, who did that to you? So if you have a physical ailment, something, people want to know. Mental illness often is that invisible wound they cannot see. So you want to share what you are experiencing with those who care. The T, you want to tell the truth. And that can be really hard sometimes because you may be having thoughts that you think nobody's going to understand. Once again, talk to that person who cares about you and tell the truth. Now, I don't know about you, but many of you all have computers that are not working right. Check your trash bin. There's a good chance that you think you deleted something, but you really it's still hanging in the trash bin. And until you really empty the trash bin, it's still hanging around. That's true with us in our emotions and our lives. There are things that we think we've dealt with, but we really haven't dealt with. We have to empty the trash bin. And Rose has said these 2 words for the last 45 minutes: self-care, self-care, self-care. The P stands for pause for self-care. Now, self-care has to be something that is intentional. You need to make it an appointment. Just like you have a hair appointment, just like you have a nail appointment, make self-care an appointment. I'm going to get up and walk today. I'm going to read a book today. I'm going to go do yoga today. I'm going to meditate today. Whatever that thing that brings you joy, that brings you happiness, that brings you peace, make time for it. And we just said this over and over and over again. Ruth, I got you covered. We said this over and over and over again. It's okay to seek help. The S here stands for seek assistance. Let's do this again. All right, you ready? S stands for share what you're experiencing with those who care. That's the S, right? 5 steps. The T stands for tell the truth. Tell the truth. The E stands for empty the trash bin. The P stands for pause for self-care. And the S stands for seek assistance. Those are 5 steps. So share, tell, empty, pause, seek. If you do those things, those are those steps that you can take to help yourself. But it all begins with dealing with the stigma to actually seek help. And I'm hoping today we've said some things to highlight that it is okay not to be okay. And I wear a bracelet every day that says, it's okay not to be okay, have hope. My friends, those 2 words, have hope, is essential in recovery because to say recovery is possible hinges upon you having the hope that you can recover. And so every day I put on my bracelet, it's okay not to be okay, have hope, because there are some days that I am not just okay. And in case you're wondering, I have a therapist too, because I think sometimes people think pastors and preachers shouldn't have therapists. Well, my friends, I go to my therapist and I also go to my God. But I have come to understand that we have to be able to talk to someone we can trust about what we are experiencing. So yes, Jesus plus therapy is okay. Uh, yeah.
And so, Jermaine, I want to talk a little bit about a lot of people don't seek therapy. And so it's very difficult for us to help with removing the stigma because they think that there is an issue with prayer and therapy. And can you talk a little bit about how that goes together?
Yeah, absolutely. So, um, you know, the reality is that faith and doubt are not mutually exclusive of one another. A lot of people have prayed and their prayers have not been answered, which then leads to doubt that God is hearing them, which causes them to believe somehow they don't have enough faith, which then causes them to somehow believe that whatever they are experiencing somehow may be a result somehow of their lack of faith. And I want you to know that faith and doubt are not mutually exclusive. The fact of the matter is that when you read sacred texts like scripture, you'll see it is full of people who had doubt who came to faith. So it's important to know that yes, you may pray and you may ask God for a certain thing and you may feel like it hasn't happened. But let me tell you this much. That's the beautiful thing of taking care of one another because we are called to be support one for the other. And so sometimes it may be just seeking out that help from your neighbor, seeking that help out from someone else who cares about you. And that could be the answer to a prayer is simply seeking out help amongst those who can be the hands and the feet and the eyes of God. So I would say that you continue to pray, but go to your doctor. Continue to pray, but take your medication. Continue to pray, but go to a support group. So it is prayer plus. So just consider prayer plus. Prayer plus whatever else you need to maintain your wellness. So I would say don't stop praying because we do believe prayer changes things. We believe that. Not a cliche. We believe that. But most of the time, prayer won't change things, but prayer will change you. So just know that you can keep praying, but don't feel like you can't add that plus to it. So like you go to a restaurant and say it's me plus one. Listen, it needs to be you plus one, two, three, four. Wherever you need to add to it, add to that.
And I was going to just say too that one of the reasons that we really work with pastors is because we hear this all the time. Pastors want you to pray. They want you to do everything that you can to make sure that, you know, like somebody said, Jesus plus therapy. But the one pastor that I was talking to said that if somebody failed and broke their leg, and he said, and this might sound a little, you know, gross, but you can see the bone, you know, protruding out of their skin. He said, I am going to pray for that person, but I'm going to be dialing 911 because, you know, God has put a lot of people out here who have talents to take care of those things, you know, right now that we need help for. So that's the way that I see with therapy as well. You know, we have people who are skilled in this area, therapists, counselors, psychiatrists. Where do we get these talents from? We got them from God. So apparently, we're supposed to be getting the help that we need. So yes, prayer, but also using the talents of others to do work right now that we need for anything that's happening with us.
Yeah, and I would say most definitely that whatever your spirituality is that brings you wholeness and wellness, you know, we know spirituality is a protective factor. And so, whatever it may be that you draw inspiration, that you draw strength, that you draw energy from, don't neglect that. Be holistic in your approach. So,
Mhm.
maintain your spiritual wellness, maintain your physical wellness, maintain your mental wellness. This is holistic. So, you know, what we do know is this is that your diet impacts your mood. Rose mentioned earlier how the brain is that organ where sometimes we negate, but we also know that there are chemicals in our gut, in our digestive system, actually that control our mood. And so it's important that you have a diet that is one that is not full of sugars and full of those other things that can impact your mood. Some of you all have gone out and you've had a great meal and it felt good going down, but the way it affected how you felt later on, you thought, man, I shouldn't have ate that. Uh, Food most definitely can impact how you feel in many ways. And so having a diet that is full of healthy vegetables and full of other things that can, and I'm not a dietitian, that's why I'm not trying to give you any formulas, but talk to your doctors and ask them, what do you need to cut out in order to improve your physical health? My friends, they're all connected. Your physical well-being is connected to your emotional well-being. And for many of us, our spiritual well-being is connected to all of those there. So just know that this is about holistic care. And while mental health seems to be that taboo subject, if you are not taking care of your physical health, it will impact your mental health and vice versa.
Okay, do we have any questions that we haven't answered?
Hi, it looks like we did get a question on any other book recommendations that you can make focusing on self-help and mental health and self-care. And if not, I can certainly recommend going to the catalog. We can put that type of information together for anyone who's ever interested, and we will mail it to you or email it to you and things like that.
I really don't have any book recommendations. Do you, Jermaine? Now, I always tell people too that if they can, write down stuff, get you a journal and write down your feelings, write down what's happening to you, what are you grateful for, what can you do today, if you could take a walk. Just think of those things like Jermaine had initially said, feeling good about yourself, reading books that make you feel good, reading topics on mental health. I don't know. I'm not trying to market myself, but there's a lot of books out there, and I think I may even have a couple. Just look my name up where I call myself the author who write edgy books on trauma. So a lot of topics. There's a lot of different kind of self-help books out there that you can pick up. I would say just do, especially with the library. We can't go in there now, but if you can browse their list, I do that every day. Last night, I think I put a couple books on hold. So you can read their description. And as Crystal was saying, I'm sure that they can provide a list of books as well. Jermaine, do you have a favorite
Yeah.
one that you've used?
Well, I would say that as far as books on self-help, so forth, one of the main things I try to make sure before I just throw out something is that I read it myself, so that I'm not throwing out a endorsement, something that I haven't read myself. So what I will make a commitment to do is to get with Ms. Harris and send some recommendations her way, and then she can put that on a list there. So I'll make sure I do that.
Yeah, because it's kind of hard for me to think on the spot of some of those books that I've read to try to, to help me.
Yeah.
I'm not sure.
Yeah. And I,
A huge collection of a variety of books that we can certainly recommend and get a list created. I'll
yeah.
definitely make sure all the panelists get that bibliography.
Yeah, that's wonderful. And I would, one of the things we've been saying is education, education. And so I've been a national trainer of a program called Mental Health First Aid for the last, now going on 13 years. And mental health first aid is the help that you offer to somebody who may be developing a mental health challenge or may be experiencing a non-crisis or crisis situation. And that help is provided to the person gets help or until the crisis is resolved. And it is a virtual training, so you can get that training done virtually, but it's a great beginning step to learn first aid skills to help somebody. And we use a action plan called ALGE which stands for assess for risk of suicide or harm, listen non-judgmentally, give reassurance and information. And the last two E's we call E1, E2. E1 stands for encourage appropriate professional help, and E2 stands for encourage self-help and other support strategies. I would encourage you to go to mentalhealthfirstaid.org. That's mentalhealthfirstaid.org. You can put in your zip code and you can find a class being offered in your area. Now, I lived in St. Louis for about 5 years. I loved St. Louis, originally from Kansas City, Missouri, but I live in Las Vegas now. And so if you put in your zip code, you can find what trainings are being offered in your area. You can also, if you want to reach out to me to learn more, you can go to JermaineAlberty.com, go to contact us, and we can connect you that way too. Now, my name has been spelled with an A, but it is without an A. My mother was being really special to give me a unique name. So it really is spelled Jermine, and then Alberty, ALBERTY.com. So JermaineAlberty.com. Reach out to me there, and I'm happy to connect you with the right people there. But once again, it's all about education. It's all about increasing that literacy, that awareness. And the more aware you become about a subject matter and more well-versed you become about it, the more you can offer help. I think people want to help, they just don't know how. And so by increasing your awareness, that decreases stigma and it helps you to get help. And just know that African Americans are, just like many things, adversely affected with mental health challenges. And often it is rooted in a word that we haven't talked about that I've heard, and that's trauma. Because we have experienced historical trauma and we continue to experience trauma through the racial inequities that we experience every day in our society. And so those traumas, whether it be traumas that we experience by being profiled, profiled in many ways, that kind of trauma most definitely can increase anxiety, can increase depression, and also lead to self-medication through drugs or alcohol, other means to deal with the stress and the anxiety and the depression. So trauma is one of the most powerful risk factors when we talk about mental illness, is trauma. And so it's important that we talk about that trauma, that we don't keep that trauma that we've experienced in. And Rose said it well, we have to move past what happens in this house stays in this house. We have to move past that. We have to be open and honest and share those things with someone who cares, get it out, and then begin the healing process. You cannot begin that healing process when you have things just bottled up inside. Believe me, if you get shaken too much, you will eventually have it run out of you. And I want to be clear that only 4% violence in society can be attributed to mental illness, about 4%. And so it's important to note that just because a person has a mental illness does not mean that they will be violent. So just know that that is a misnomer, that is a myth. And so just know that, because that also is a stigma we want to bust. We have roughly about 25 minutes left, is what I understand. We were supposed to be finished around so we are still here to answer any questions that you may have. But this has been a great conversation.
Good.
Yes, and I also wanted to share for those individuals who may be attending a church, if you're not already on our list of churches who have gone through our 20-hour training program, or if you're a church who's might be interested in going through our training program, it is a free 20-hour training program, and the mental health first aid class comes free with that. and we provide the books and everything that goes along with that. So I put my email address in the chat box for those who might be interested in finding out about Bridges to Care and Recovery, which is a 20-hour program that trains individual in becoming a behavior health friendly congregation. And people who go through the training come out as wellness champions who can provide resources and information and understand some of the basic information about mental health and how to identify some of the symptoms that people may be going through. Very similar, as Jermaine was saying, you won't be able to, you're not a mental health specialist, or you're not coming out as a doctor or anything coming out of the program, but it does provide you with a lot of information that will help you in your church member, in your community, to deal with mental health issues and to seek those services that are available out in the community. We make sure that when you walk away, you have contacts at these agencies I spoke about earlier, that you can get the support that you need. And we also provide support groups for those individuals who may have someone in their family who suffer from substance use and you worry about them. We do have a program that will help that as well.
Ms. Rose, is the 20-hour training online?
Right now, yes, we have a virtual program that's really successful. We had to bring everything in because of COVID, and we're finding that people really like the virtual program more because they don't have to get in their cars and go out, we do, you can look us up on Facebook. We are called Bridges to Care and Recovery Wellness Champions. And we do have a Facebook page, and there are some videos on there that you can review about any topics around mental health that we provide. Jermaine is one of the instructors who come to us. He's with an organization called Pathways as well. And they do did I say it right? Pathways. And they do the companionship training. Because oftentimes when people are having issues, some people walk away from them out of fear, as Jermaine was saying, that sometimes people just think that they're going to hurt me, so I'm not going to talk to them. So they have a companionship model that we really like, and we make sure that we teach that through our training program as well.
Ms. Rose and Reverend Alberty, is the PowerPoint that you presented today going to be available for me to send out to anyone?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, send it to me and I'll make sure the attendees get it.
Okay.
I did have a question I wanted to ask in regard to mental health. The question was, can you speak more on how to rebuild trust in medical professionals, or how to build it or feel trusting? Because that's been a lot of my experience discussing mental health with colleagues and friends.
Well, we've been going through, somebody asked me to repeat the name of the program. Is Bridges to Care in Recovery. What we do is build a bridge from the faith-based community to mental health, so that we're making sure that people have all that information. But to answer the question about what we can do, Jermaine, I may have forgotten it just that fast. What was the question again,
So
Crystal?
the question is around building trust
Oh, yeah.
in the medical system. And, it's one of those things where trust is built from relationship. And so, it really boils down to really getting to know the health professional that's providing treatment to you. And, sometimes people don't go get help because of the lack of trust in the system itself. So not in a particular person per se, but the system. There's a lack of trust in the system. And so therefore the whole system is painted with that broad brush stroke that, they can't be trusted. They're going to experiment on you. They're going to label you. And let me tell you that distrust is not unfounded, because we all know about what has happened people of color in the healthcare system. So that's why it's important that you, when you talk to a healthcare professional, that you're open and honest about your concerns, that you're open and honest about your distrust, and build that rapport and relationship with that healthcare professional one person at a time. I tell you, we have a healthcare professional who is golden, Dr. Turner. When I tell you she represents healthcare well, African American female, really highly recognized in her field. And she's doing great work with Bridges to Care and Recovery. And I think she's as a model of an African American physician who's out there doing great work. And so, talking to health professionals like her can help break down some of that distrust and some of that stigma there. But I just want you to know that distrust most definitely is not unfounded, but the only way we can build trust is through relationship. So I hope that answers that question, Crystal.
Yeah, and someone also put into the comment sections that medical professionals also have a huge role in rebuilding trust. Is not all on the patient or the community. And you're exactly right. And as Pastor Jermaine was saying, is that we have been working with physicians and psychiatrists that do a lot of our programs for us. And Dr. Kanika Turner is one physician that really does a lot of work with us. She's constantly out here talking about information that's helpful, giving people the keys to success in having a good relationship with their physicians. She's really trying to communicate how important it is to ask questions. She's providing a lot of information on COVID. She even she had her vaccine where she took pictures and posted them on Facebook. So she's doing workshops around COVID, even around the Tuskegee experiment, explaining why this is different. So, we do have some who are out here trying to help build trust back into the profession. But for us, like Jermaine was saying, we have to, in a part of self-care is asking all kind of questions to make us feel comfortable and make people talk to us. And if you don't feel that a physician is answering your questions, or you don't feel that they're taking time with you or don't care, you have to make that change.
And Rose, I think what's important about that is because it used to be, and it may still be, that doctors were just given automatic trust. It's a physician, they know what they're talking about, so you just trust what they say. And that trust has been broken. So I think that when you see a physician, if you don't understand something, you need to ask them, can you please explain that? Now, let me tell you something. I know access to care can be very limited in some communities, but I will say this much. If you don't agree, get a second opinion. Don't just go with the first opinion, get a second opinion. I know that's sometimes easily said than done. You may say, hey, all we have is this one clinic in our community, so that's it. Or I don't have transportation to get to go see someone else, or my insurance may not let me do that. But I would say, if possible, if you don't agree, get a second opinion. And I would say most definitely, we have to hold all professionals to account. And so I agree, it's not just the community's responsibility, but we have to be able to let people know when we are not understanding or we don't trust that opinion. I will say this much though, WebMD has caused a lot of issues because a lot of folks are self-diagnosing themselves. And so before they even go to the doctor, they already got a diagnosis that they've already come up with themselves. And so therefore, what happens sometimes when we go to doctors, we'll tell them all the physical stuff going on, but sometimes not the emotional stuff going on, which can also skew that diagnosis also. So it's important to have that ability to hopefully be open and honest with professionals. Now, I do know that I'm seeing in the chat here, you can also ask for another opinion within the same practice if you cannot go elsewhere. And Kimberly, absolutely, I agree. So try your best to hear from more than one person, get your options. I don't know about you, but this may not be a good analogy, but there's sometimes I see something I just really want, and I'm like, I got to have that right there. And then I get it, and I'm like, well, that wasn't what I thought it was going to be. Sometimes we get familiar with certain things that, that brand, that particular thing we want, and then we get it and it's not what we want. So what we do is we go, I'm going to change providers. I'm going to change products because this is not meeting my satisfaction. And I feel like if you're not satisfied with your doctor, as Kimberly has said, is there someone else in the practice who can also help me with this? Doctors have a oath to do no harm. And so if they hold that oath to do no harm, then they most definitely should want you to get the help that you need.
And I think
All
the
right.
same token too, Jermaine, is that if you're going to counseling
Yeah.
and you don't feel that that's a good match, find someone who will match. It's the same way with medication. If
Yeah.
it's not making you feel better, you got to talk about it. And you got to make sure that you go to a doctor so you can get that switch to something that's going to work for you. That's the same thing with counseling. We've had people come and say, I didn't jive with that person, or I didn't feel comfortable with that person. And we just find somewhere else for them to go. So it's taking care of yourself by making sure that people can help you and that you feel comfortable with that help that you're receiving, but asking as many questions as you possibly can. And that goes for counseling as well as physical pieces. Jermaine, you was finna say something else?
Oh no, it was
Did I
no.
make you forget it?
No, I'm good. I'm good. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was going to ask another question for both of you, please. As if we see a family member or a friend stigmatizing someone with a mental health issue, can you recommend ways that we can address it with our family and friend to kind of champion, you know, stopping the stigma?
That's a great question. There's two words that your grandma will say to you, and you know what that meant when she said, "Stop it." You just stopped it, right? You stop it. You stop that right now. And I think, for me, I know it may be a little comical there, but really we need to stop that. We need to stop that. We need to stop that. We need to stop it because, imagine how you would feel if somebody said that about you. So it's really about empathy. It's about empathy. Imagine if you was in that place. How would you want somebody to describe you? And that goes from those very things that Rose was saying in the very beginning about things we want to avoid saying. It's all about raising that awareness, saying, hey, just imagine how you would feel if somebody said that about you. And they may say, I don't care. And say, well, I do care. I do care. And I
Mhm.
think and so I think it's taking that stand. And sometimes it's uncomfortable, but taking that stand when people are saying things that we know. And it's not about being politically correct, but it's about emotional correctness, about really understanding words have power. And, we all have been told things that didn't make us feel well emotionally and impacted how we felt. And so imagine being put down or called names. It doesn't bode well for that person's emotional well-being. So Crystal, long way around that. I said two words, stop it, stop that. But really, I just think you call it out.
That's a great point. I think you just should call it out when it's happening. I think that especially if they're saying something to a kid, you have to intervene at that moment because you don't want that kid walking away thinking that something is wrong with him. I've heard people say that child is stupid, and I would stop and say, you shouldn't say that to him, and give a more of a positive, warm feeling to that individual. Maybe, that's not the way you do something. But I just stop it right then and there because I don't want the kid to walk away feeling that way. And I try not to hurt the person feeling that's saying it, but just basically don't do that. That's not helpful. So
Yeah. And
for
I
me, it's
think,
just face to face, stop
Yeah.
it. Just like our grandmother would say, don't do that.
Yeah, and I think it's not about hurting somebody. It's not about somehow being soft or so forth, or well, some people say just tough it up, or pull yourself up by your bootstraps, or you're weak. Believe me, mental illness has nothing to do with being weak or lazy or so forth. It is an illness, just like any other illness. And you don't, I just left the doctor for my annual physical. I'm making February my month, my physical. So last February I went to get a physical. I'm making February now my annual checkup. And so I would encourage you to just get a checkup on a regular basis, because some things that you may think is mental illness could be physical illness, could be a thyroid issue, could be some other things. So just know your emotions could be impacted by something physically going on. So physical wellness is connected once again to your mental wellness. So get that physical checkup. And so when you are not feeling good, go get checked up. But once again, it's not about weakness. If you start feeling weakness in your leg or in your arm, you're gonna go see somebody about that. The same is true if you start feeling a certain way emotionally. You need to get checked up on that. So just know that mental illness is not about a person's weakness, or, as we said earlier, lack of faith and so forth. It is an illness.
Yes. And someone in the comment section was saying that or a word that is commonly used to describe mental illness in African American communities, saying that they slow. That's a part
Yeah.
of that labeling process. They slow, they retarded, all of those things that are hurtful to
Yeah.
people, which makes them shut down. And we have to change the way that we speak to people, or we share any kind of information with them. Those are very hurtful words. Stop that labeling, because if you say I'm slow, why would I come to you? You already think I'm slow. You're not going to help me. You putting me down. You saying this to me in my face and other people's faces. So I'm not going to seek you for anything.
And we know that there are what is called developmental delays, and developmental delays can impact how a person's brain develops. And so developmental delays are there. And so I always I think it goes back to the golden rule: do unto others as you would have done unto yourself. Treat other folks the way you want to be treated. And so I know that there are some jokes that used to be funny to me until I came to awareness, and they're no longer funny because of empathy. What if it was my grandchild? By the way, I'm a peepaw. Yep, 3-week-old grandbaby. Woo! I saw her this morning at 5 o'clock this morning. But yeah, I'm a peepaw. So yeah, so I'm like, boy, what if that was your grandbaby? What if that was your child? What if that was your cousin? So empathy. How would you want somebody to treat your loved one? How would you want somebody to treat you? So no, words matters. Words matter.
And I'm glad that you said that too, because even when you're young, if you see somebody doing that, you have to stop it. When I was growing up, I can remember sitting at the kitchen table, and you would have some kid who may be going through this issue knocking on the window, and we would laugh. We was like 10, 9 years old, laugh and say that person, look at that person, he retarded. And my mother would say, no, stop it. You're not going to be that kid. You're not going to do that. And my mother would go and open the door, and let the person come in and make us, have a relationship and talk. So I think that a lot of things that we do kind of start in our home. So we have to make sure that we're talking about it and stopping, things when they happen. That's why it's so important what Jermaine just said, words matter. And if you don't stop it, or you don't show how that's hurtful, that's going to go on. You're going to be an adult doing the same stuff. It's not funny. When you little, you be laughing at this stuff. But when you come into a knowledge, it's like, man, I was cruel. Why did I do that? Because I didn't know any better. And so it's really important that we learn as much as we can about this. And the other thing I want to Jermaine to kind of talk about is in what we finding is, I remember Jermaine was talking about back in the day when people had cancer, this was a big secret. Nobody wanted you to know. It's like wearing a scarlet letter on your chest with a C. Well, that's the same thing kind of happened in our community about mental health. So we've been trying to use, instead of saying mental illness, we're trying to get people to start saying behavior health issues. And people said that just sounds better to me. So that's something that we've been working on as an agency to kind of use that terminology to support people so that they won't feel alone, that they won't feel singled out. You have anything around
So
that, Jermaine?
yeah, just real quick, because time is running out. First, I felt like we had all the time in the world. Now it's like time is running out. Now, let me just tell you, the reason why I was laughing a few minutes ago, I was like, I would have loved to have met Rose's mom. She sounds so cool. That's why I was
Yes,
laughing a
she
few minutes ago. I wasn't laughing at with the words. I was like, oh my goodness, I would love to have met Rose's mom. I've seen pictures of her. And Rose's story about her mom just makes me love her more and more. But I tell you, behavioral health is a new terminology to deal with the stigma of mental health, because mental illness does impact one's behavior. But just know it's not all about the impact of behavior. It's an impact on one's thoughts, impact on one's emotions. So our thoughts and our emotions impact our behavior. And so behavioral health is not about just modifying behavior, but looking at those signs and symptoms that we're impacted by, that influence our behavior. So if we can treat those illnesses, those symptoms that are impacting our behaviors and our thoughts and our emotions and our physical, then persons can get well. So behavioral health is this umbrella term that really takes into account how mental illness impacts our emotions and our thoughts and our physical, which impacts how we behave. And so that's that umbrella term there. But just know, behavioral health is referring to mental illness, referring to our mental health and well-being. Crystal, I see 2 minutes left on the clock. And so I'm going to turn it back to you for a
I
wrap up.
want to, before Krista do that, just
Yeah.
before we end, Jermaine, someone in the comment section said that they had corrected a 46-year, recent corrected a 46-year-old pastor's wife making a comment like that. And I want to say that one of the reasons that we train in the church is because there's a lot of people sitting in there, and if the pastor and the pastor's wife and some of the members use the wrong term, not only are you hurting a person emotionally, they may not get the help that they need, but you may have a spiritual loss right there as well. So one of the things that I learned from Jermaine that we don't think about how words hurt is that when we stand up and we welcome people to our church and we say something like, I thank God for waking me up in my right mind this morning, and you have somebody in the audience who's thinking, well, why did God wake them up in their right mind and didn't wake me up in mine? So little things that we do with the word and the impact of those words can really hurt someone. So if everybody in the church waking up with right mind and I'm not, I might not come back to your church anymore or any church, because you just spiritually made me feel that God loves everybody except me. So I just wanted to just say that.
Yeah, good stuff.
Hi, Carla.
It looks like that is an important discussion that's happening right now. It sounds like you are so right to start in the church, because another of our attendees said they've seen that happen in churches as well. So I'm glad you brought
Yeah.
it up.
Yeah, we wanted to really start in church, not only just for those reasons, but because we had a lot of people feeling, and I didn't want to get into that part of it, but I have Jermaine for my covering here. Is a lot of people felt like if I said something was wrong with me, or that I'm going through these issues, that they felt like people would see them like there's a demon in them and they have to cast them out and that kind of stuff. And so that was one of the reasons we wanted to start in the church. We wanted to help all around. Jermaine, you have something, those could
Well,
be our
just
Bible.
real brief, 'cause I know time is at hand, but the reason why working in faith and spiritual communities are important, because research shows people tend to turn to their faith community first when they are in a crisis. So by equipping faith leaders and members of faith communities to be able to respond appropriately is very important because people turn to their faith first, often in crisis. So that's why it's so important we get leaders and members of in faith and spiritual communities trained to offer that assistance. That's gonna be my last word there.
Okay.
Thank you both so much. This was so informational and so helpful to me as a parent and a Black woman, so I really appreciate it. Yes, our program does come to an end at 11:30, but I did have the virtual space till noon, so we don't have to rush. I did want to say that I will be sure to get a copy of Rose's PowerPoint, a bibliography about mental health resources, and a copy of this video to anyone who wants to contact me. I have a list of people who participated today, so I have your email addresses, but I will also give mine in case you want to reach out and get more information about everything that was discussed today. I'll put it in the chat, and then I'll say it here is charris@slcl.org. That's C as in cat, Harris. So I'll put it in the chat, but I will also make sure that this information gets out to anyone who would like it. I want to thank you both so much. Oh, and I do want to point out that Rose brought this up, but join us again next week at this same time, where we will have Reverend Jermaine and Rose, back with us again to discuss the signs and symptoms of mental health. So we'll get to delve further. We'll get to think about how this impacts us personally, and we'll get to talk more. So please join us same time, Friday, February 12th at 10 a.m. on Zoom. You can register on the library website, and you can contact me if you need the registration information also.
And I just want to say, Crystal, thank you for inviting us today. I really enjoyed the conversation, and I did see that somebody put in the comment section that I worked with before. I'm glad to see you here. So it's been a long time since we've seen each other, but she just recognized me in the comment section. But thank you so much. And thank you, Jermaine. I just love talking about this subject because we want to do everything that we can in our community to reduce the stigma and get people the help that they need, feel comfortable about talking about the situation and seeking counsel when they need it. So thank you again for today. And thank you for all those who attended.
Yes, thank you so much. And we're looking forward to seeing you on next Friday.
Yes, absolutely. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and end the session now. Thank you all.
Thank you so much.